What if one man became so rich that his wealth shook the global economy? Not through war, not through conquest, but simply by traveling. What if a single journey caused gold to lose value across entire regions for years? And what if that man ruled an African empire so powerful that Europe, the Middle East, and Asia were forced to rewrite their maps? This is the story of Mansa Musa, the emperor of the Mali Empire in the 14th century, widely regarded as the richest individual in recorded history. But beyond the headlines of unimaginable wealth lies a deeper, more important question. How did he use that power? Was Mansa Musa a selfless ruler spreading knowledge, faith, and prosperity? Or did his actions serve personal glory as much as public good? In this analysis, we will follow his life in strict chronological order, from his origins and rise to power, to his legendary pilgrimage, political achievements, and lasting legacy. Along the way, we'll ask hard questions. Did his generosity help or harm economies? Did his rule strengthen Mali for the future, or expose it to decline? And why is his story still misunderstood in Western history today? Stay with us till the end, because understanding Mansa Musa is not just about gold. It's about power, leadership, faith, and how history decides who is remembered and who is forgotten. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Historical Talez. Kindly watch, comment, and subscribe on this channel. We will be grateful if you help us do this. We will be notifying you when we drop a new video. Don't forget to tell us where you're watching from. Before we move to the main story, if today is your first time of watching our video, please subscribe. Mansa Musa was born around 1280 CE in the heart of West Africa, within the powerful Mali Empire, located in parts of present-day Mali, Senegal, Guinea, Niger, and Mauritania. He was born into the Keita dynasty, the royal lineage founded by Sundiata Keita, the legendary empire builder. This bloodline alone placed Musa close to power from birth. His parents were members of the ruling elite, though their names are not clearly recorded, reflecting the oral tradition of West African history rather than written archives. Musa grew up in a world where gold, trade, and knowledge shaped daily life. Mali controlled major trans-Saharan trade routes linking Africa to North Africa, the Middle East, and Europe. Gold, salt, books, and ideas flowed through its cities. From childhood, Musa was surrounded by wealth, but also by responsibility. Royal children were trained not just to rule, but to preserve balance, justice, and faith. Unlike many medieval rulers elsewhere, Mali emphasized education and moral instruction. Young Musa was taught governance through observation, storytelling, Islamic teachings, and mentorship by elders and scholars. There were no universities in the modern sense, but learning was constant. Here's a question worth asking. Does being born into power prepare someone to rule wisely, or does it make leadership feel like entitlement? Musa's early life would soon test that question in ways no one could have imagined. From a young age, Mansa Musa was carefully prepared for leadership within the Mali Empire. Although there were no formal schools or universities like those in modern Europe, education in Mali was structured, rigorous, and continuous. Royal children learned through oral history, Islamic scholarship, law, economics, and statecraft, guided by elders, courtiers, and religious scholars. Islam had already taken root among Mali's ruling class before Musa's time, and he was raised as a devout Muslim. He studied the Quran, basic Arabic, Islamic law, Sharia, and moral philosophy. This religious education shaped his worldview deeply. Faith was not just spiritual, it was political. It guided justice, charity, diplomacy, and leadership decisions. Musa learned that a ruler was accountable not only to his people, but to God. He was also trained in administration and economics, observing how gold mines were regulated, how taxes were collected, and how trade routes were protected. Mali's prosperity depended on balance. Too much control could stifle trade, too little could invite chaos. Musa absorbed these lessons by watching experienced officials govern vast territories. There is no record of Musa studying a specific course or attending a named institution, but his education was equivalent to elite political training of medieval kings anywhere in the world. This raises an important question for us today. Is leadership best learned in classrooms, or through lived responsibility and moral grounding? For Musa, education was not about titles. It was about preparation for power, and history would soon show just how well he learned those lessons. The path that led Mansa Musa to the throne was unusual, even by medieval standards. Before becoming emperor, Musa served as a deputy ruler under Mansa Muhammad ibn Chu, the reigning emperor of Mali. In the Mali political system, it was common for a trusted royal to be appointed as regent whenever the emperor embarked on long journeys. Around 1312 CE, Mansa Muhammad decided to undertake a dangerous and ambitious expedition across the Atlantic Ocean, reportedly in search of new lands. Before leaving, he appointed Musa as acting ruler, entrusting him with the full administration of the empire. This decision would change history forever. Mansa Muhammad never returned, and according to Mali tradition, his absence was taken as death. As regent, Musa had already demonstrated discipline, fairness, and competence. He maintained internal stability, protected trade routes, and kept the empire prosperous during the emperor's absence. When it became clear that Mansa Muhammad was gone for good, Musa was formally crowned Mansa, Emperor of Mali. Now here's a question worth asking. Was Musa's rise purely accidental? Or did destiny meet preparation at the perfect moment? Unlike rulers who seized power through coups or bloodshed, Musa inherited authority through trust and performance. There was no rebellion, no civil war, and no recorded opposition to his coronation. This peaceful transition strengthened his legitimacy and unified the empire under his rule. By the time he became emperor, Musa was not a young novice. He was a trained administrator, a devout Muslim, and a careful observer of power. His reign would soon elevate Mali from a regional superpower to a global name, known from West Africa to Europe and the Middle East. But the greatest test of his leadership, and the decision that would make him immortal in history, was still ahead. After ascending the throne, Mansa Musa focused first on consolidating power across the vast Mali Empire. His territory stretched thousands of kilometers, covering deserts, savannas, forests, and major trade cities. Holding such an empire together required more than wealth, it required political intelligence. Musa strengthened central authority while allowing local leaders to retain cultural autonomy, a balance that reduced rebellion and encouraged loyalty. One of his major political achievements was stabilizing and expanding trade routes. Musa invested heavily in security, ensuring caravans transporting gold and salt could move safely across the Sahara. This protection increased confidence among African, Arab, and Mediterranean traders, further enriching Mali. He also appointed capable governors and judges, emphasizing justice and accountability rather than fear. Musa ruled as both political leader and religious authority, using Islam as a unifying force. He sponsored mosques, encouraged Islamic courts, and aligned Mali diplomatically with North African Muslim states. Yet he did not force conversion, respecting traditional beliefs among his people. This tolerance preserved social harmony. Was Mansa Musa's leadership truly selfless, or was it carefully designed to strengthen his personal authority? By centralizing power while promoting fairness, Musa created a system that worked remarkably well during his lifetime. Under his leadership, Mali reached unprecedented political stability and international recognition. European maps began labeling Mali as a land of gold and power. Musa was no longer just an African ruler. He had become a global political figure, shaping diplomacy far beyond his borders. In 1324 CE, Mansa Musa made the decision that would secure his place in world history, his pilgrimage, Hajj, to Mecca. This was not just a religious journey, it was a political and economic event unlike anything the medieval world had ever seen. Musa traveled with a massive caravan said to include tens of thousands of people, soldiers, officials, servants, and enslaved attendants. Hundreds of camels carried pure gold, some loaded with over 100 kilograms each. As Musa passed through Cairo, Medina, and Mecca, he distributed gold generously, to the poor, scholars, merchants, and rulers. His generosity was so vast that it flooded local markets with gold, causing its value to drop for years in parts of the Middle East. Economies were shaken simply because one man passed through. This raises an important question for the audience. Was this generosity wise leadership or reckless use of national wealth? Some historians argue that Musa's actions showed compassion and faith. Others suggest the spending harmed foreign economies and exposed Mali's wealth too openly to outsiders. During the journey, Musa also engaged in diplomacy. He met scholars, rulers, and traders, placing Mali firmly on the global stage. European and Arab writers recorded his wealth in awe, spreading Mali's reputation across continents. The pilgrimage transformed how the world saw Africa. Mali was no longer distant or unknown. It was powerful, wealthy, and deeply connected to global religion and trade. Musa returned home not just as a faithful Muslim, but as the most famous ruler of his time. But fame has consequences. Did this journey strengthen Mali, or did it quietly invite future threats? After returning from his pilgrimage, Mansa Musa initiated one of the most important cultural transformations in African history. Deeply inspired by what he had seen in Cairo, Medina, and Mecca, Musa set out to turn Mali into a center of learning, religion, and culture, not just wealth. He invited architects, scholars, jurists, and teachers from across the Islamic world to settle in his empire. One of his greatest achievements was the development of Timbuktu into a global intellectual hub. He commissioned mosques, libraries, and learning centers, including the famous Jingareber Mosque, built with the help of Andalusian architect Abu Ishaq al-Sahili. These buildings were not symbolic decorations. They were functional institutions where law, theology, astronomy, mathematics, and history were studied. Musa invested heavily in education, paying scholars generously and encouraging families to send children to learn. Books became valuable commodities, sometimes worth more than gold. While there were no universities in the modern sense, Timbuktu's scholarly system rivaled medieval centers in Europe and the Middle East. Here's a question for the audience. Was Mansa Musa spending wealth for the future, or trying to immortalize his reign through monuments and knowledge? Either way, the results were lasting. His investments turned Mali into one of the most literate and culturally advanced societies of its time. Through culture and education, Musa ensured that Mali's greatness was not measured only in gold, but in ideas, learning, and legacy. Beyond his faith and cultural projects, Mansa Musa was first and foremost an economic strategist of rare brilliance. Under his rule, Mali controlled some of the world's richest gold mines, including those in Bambouk and Bouré. At the time, Mali supplied a significant portion of the gold circulating in Europe and the Islamic world. Musa understood that gold was not just wealth, it was power. Rather than allowing unrestricted mining, Musa enforced strict state control. Gold nuggets belonged to the emperor. Private traders were permitted only gold dust. This policy stabilized the economy and prevented inflation within Mali. Salt, another critical commodity, was equally regulated. By managing supply, Musa ensured steady prosperity rather than sudden collapse. Mali sat at the heart of trans-Saharan trade, connecting West Africa to North Africa, the Middle East, and indirectly to Europe. Musa invested in caravan security, road maintenance, and fair taxation, making Mali a preferred trading partner. Foreign merchants trusted his system, and trade flourished. Now ask yourself, was this economic control an act of wisdom or excessive centralization of wealth? Supporters argue it protected the people. Critics might say it placed too much power in one ruler's hands. Still, the results were undeniable. Mali became a global economic force, and Mansa Musa emerged as the most influential economic figure of the medieval world. His policies turned natural resources into lasting national strength, something many modern states still struggle to achieve today. Although Mansa Musa is best remembered for wealth and learning, he also ruled with strong military authority. The Mali Empire was vast, and such size could not survive without force. Musa inherited a powerful army, but he improved its organization, discipline, and strategic purpose. His goal was not constant war, but security and stability. Under his reign, Mali expanded its influence over key cities and regions, including Gao and parts of the Niger River Valley. These areas were crucial for trade, taxation, and defense. Military governors were installed to maintain order, protect traders, and enforce imperial law. Rebellion was rare during Musa's rule, not because of fear alone, but because most regions benefited economically from being part of Mali. Musa used the army primarily as a deterrent, not a tool of destruction. Caravans moved safely, borders were respected, and internal conflicts were quickly resolved. Unlike some rulers who sought glory through endless conquest, Musa focused on protecting what already existed. Is military strength more admirable when it conquers, or when it prevents war altogether? Musa seemed to believe that peace, backed by strength, was the highest form of power. There is no evidence of Musa's involvement in coups or violent seizures of power. His rule remained legitimate and stable throughout his reign. By maintaining security without unnecessary bloodshed, Mansa Musa ensured that Mali's wealth, learning, and culture could thrive without constant fear of collapse. His military policy reminds us that sometimes the strongest rulers are those who know when not to fight. Section 9. Diplomacy, global recognition, and how the world saw Mali. By the middle of his reign, Mansa Musa had transformed Mali from a powerful African empire into a recognized global state. His pilgrimage and diplomatic engagements placed Mali firmly on the political map of the medieval world. Arab historians, North African scholars, and European cartographers began documenting Mali with new seriousness. The famous Catalan Atlas of 1375 even depicted Mansa Musa holding a gold nugget, an image that shaped Western imagination of Africa for centuries. Musa maintained diplomatic relations with Egypt, Morocco, and other Islamic states, exchanging scholars, gifts, and correspondence. These relationships were not symbolic. They allowed Mali access to intellectual networks, legal expertise, and international legitimacy. For the first time, an African ruler was discussed in the same political conversations as European kings and Middle Eastern sultans. But here's a question for viewers to consider. Did this global exposure help Mali, or did it make the empire a target? While recognition brought prestige, it also revealed Mali's immense wealth to outsiders who would later seek control rather than partnership. Still, Musa's diplomacy was intentional and strategic. He did not isolate his empire, nor did he surrender its independence. Instead, he positioned Mali as an equal participant in global affairs, something rarely acknowledged in Western historical narratives. Through diplomacy, Mansa Musa challenged the idea that medieval Africa was isolated or passive. His reign proved that African empires negotiated, influenced, and shaped the world beyond their borders, long before European colonial expansion began. In the later years of his reign, Mansa Musa focused on preserving stability rather than expansion. Having already secured Mali's wealth, borders, and global reputation, he shifted attention to governance, justice, and the smooth functioning of institutions he had built. These years were marked by relative peace, continued trade prosperity, and the steady growth of learning centers such as Timbuktu and Gao. Historical records suggest that Musa became more inward-looking, relying on trusted officials and family members to manage day-to-day affairs. There is no evidence of major internal revolts or coups during this period, which itself speaks to the strength of his administration. His authority remained respected until the end. Mansa Musa is believed to have died around 1337 CE, though the exact date remains uncertain due to reliance on oral history and limited written sources. His death did not come through violence, exile, or overthrow, unusual for medieval rulers, but through natural causes after a long and influential reign. He was succeeded by his son, Mansa Musa, who inherited an empire at its peak. This raises an important question for the audience. Is it harder to build greatness, or to maintain it after the founder is gone? While Musa left behind immense wealth and strong institutions, succession would prove challenging in later generations. Mansa Musa's death marked the end of an era. Yet, unlike many rulers whose power fades quickly after death, his influence continued to shape Mali's political culture, economy, and global image for decades, proving that true power outlives the ruler who wields it. Unlike many rulers in medieval history, Mansa Musa did not face a single, clearly defined personal enemy. There were no famous rival kings, no recorded assassination attempts, and no coups against his rule. His greatest challenges were structural, not individual: distance, scale, succession, and the long-term consequences of immense wealth. Internally, some local leaders and traditional elites quietly resisted the growing influence of Islamic law and centralized authority. While Musa ruled with tolerance, not everyone embraced the increasing role of scholars and courts. These tensions never erupted into open rebellion during his lifetime, but they hinted at future instability. Externally, Musa's real opposition came from economic exposure. By revealing Mali's wealth to the wider world during his pilgrimage, he unintentionally attracted attention from foreign powers and traders who later sought control rather than cooperation. European interest in West African gold intensified in the centuries that followed. This raises a difficult question for the audience. Did Mansa Musa's openness strengthen Mali, or did it plant the seeds of future exploitation? Some historians argue that his generosity and diplomacy were visionary. Others believe he gave away too much information about Mali's resources. There is also criticism that Musa's system relied heavily on central authority. While effective during his reign, it became harder to sustain after his death. Successors lacked his discipline, charisma, and vision, and the empire gradually weakened. Yet criticism should be balanced with context. Musa ruled longer and more peacefully than most medieval monarchs. His ability to avoid coups, civil wars, and mass violence was rare for his time. In the end, Mansa Musa's greatest opposition may not have been enemies, but time itself, testing whether even the greatest leadership can outlive the leader. After the death of Mansa Musa, the Mali Empire entered a slow and complex period of decline, not because his system failed immediately, but because maintaining greatness proved harder than creating it. His successor, Mansa Musa, inherited an empire rich in gold, culture, and reputation, but lacked Musa's discipline, vision, and authority. Over time, internal weaknesses began to surface. One major issue was over-centralization. Musa's leadership had been so strong that many systems depended heavily on the emperor's personal oversight. Without his guiding presence, corruption increased, provincial governors grew more independent, and unity weakened. Trade routes remained active, but security slowly declined as resources were mismanaged. Externally, new threats emerged. Neighboring states and later rising powers began to challenge Mali's dominance. As European interest in West African resources intensified centuries later, Mali no longer had the political strength Musa once commanded to resist long-term pressure. This leads to an important question for the audience. Should a great leader focus more on personal excellence or on building systems that survive long after they are gone? Musa did both to an extent, but history shows that even the strongest foundations require constant renewal. Despite the decline, Mali did not disappear overnight. Its cultural and scholarly influence, especially in cities like Timbuktu, continued for generations. Manuscripts, legal traditions, and learning institutions outlived political power. In the final analysis, Mansa Musa's reign represents a golden peak, a moment when African leadership reached extraordinary global influence. The decline that followed does not diminish his achievement. Instead, it reminds us that no empire is permanent, but visionary leadership can shape history long after borders fade. Centuries after his death, Mansa Musa remains one of the most studied and debated figures in world history. His legacy extends far beyond gold or spectacle. He proved clearly and permanently that African leadership in the medieval era could be intellectually advanced, economically sophisticated, diplomatically engaged, and morally grounded. Universities and scholars across Africa, Europe, North America, and Australia now recognize Mali under Musa as one of the great civilizations of its age. Modern historians revisit his reign to challenge old myths that portrayed Africa as isolated or underdeveloped before colonialism. Mansa Musa's Mali was connected to global trade, global religion, and global knowledge networks. Timbuktu's manuscripts still influence historical research today, offering written proof of Africa's scholarly traditions. But his story also invites difficult reflection. Did concentrating so much wealth and authority in one ruler make the empire vulnerable after his death? Can generosity on a global stage unintentionally weaken a nation? These are questions modern leaders still face. For today's audience, especially in the UK, USA, Canada, and Australia, Mansa Musa's life offers timeless lessons about leadership, responsibility, and power. Wealth alone did not define him, how he used it did. He invested in people, ideas, and institutions, not just monuments. In the end, Mansa Musa forces us to reconsider world history itself. How many great leaders were overlooked simply because they were African? His story reminds us that history is not fixed. It is rewritten when truth is finally allowed to speak. Section 14. Mansa Musa in Modern Memory, Popular Culture, and Final Reflection. Today, Mansa Musa occupies a unique place in global memory, standing at the crossroads of history, myth, and modern reassessment. In recent years, his name has re-emerged strongly in documentaries, academic research, school curricula, and online platforms, especially as scholars and creators challenge long-standing Eurocentric versions of world history. For many audiences in the UK, USA, Canada, and Australia, Mansa Musa represents a powerful correction, proof that Africa produced leaders who shaped global systems long before colonialism. In popular culture, Musa is often reduced to the richest man who ever lived. But this simplification hides the deeper truth. His real importance lies in how he governed, what he built, and what he valued: knowledge, justice, faith, and stability. Wealth was a tool, not the goal. This brings us to a final question for the audience. If Mansa Musa were alive today, would he be celebrated as a visionary leader or criticized for concentrating too much power in one office? Was his generosity global leadership, or did it unintentionally expose his empire to future risk? Modern nations still struggle with the same issues Musa faced: managing natural resources, balancing religion and state, investing in education, and leading ethically under global attention. His life offers lessons that remain strikingly relevant. In the end, Mansa Musa challenges us to rethink history itself. How many great leaders were ignored because their stories did not fit dominant narratives? His legacy urges the world to look again, carefully, honestly, and without bias, at Africa's place in shaping global civilization.